So some of you might remember this Lighthouse Park is where I first vlogged about the 417ES, wishing it would become a 39mm reality, and it did. Fast forward another 2 years, no, 3-4 years, and we're back here, Manhattan behind me, Queens over there, and I'm wearing, yeah, who'd have thought it? Fantastic. Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. Today, not a review, but a presentation, because you see I co-designed the watch in question. So stick around later on and I'll share where best to see an unbiased full review. But I can share a little exclusive behind the scenes, what inspired this watch, the process and all the rest of it. But first, as always, a little context. And that's why we're here on Roosevelt Island. Today, Hanhart remains the top historically important producer of chronographs and predominantly stopwatches in Germany, with an uninterrupted legacy going back to its Swiss-German roots, being founded in 1882. I became personally involved with the brand at the very start of my YouTube journey, after featuring their most iconic watch, the 417ES, as one of my watch collecting grail goals. For those who don't know, Hanhart have the prestigious achievement of creating Germany's first and most influential military pilot chronograph wristwatches during the 1930s, and in doing so, setting the design language for all Marshall-intended chronos ever since. To see what I mean, just have a look at the designs of chronographs before and then after in that era, and you can unequivocally see Hanhart's indelible influence. But back in the early days of the urban gentry, this watch was only available new in the large 42mm size, and not the period-correct original form of the post-World War II era that was made famous by being the choice of another Purcell sunglass-wearing handsome chap, Steve McQueen. Those originals were extremely rare, if not impossible to find, and unlike the deliberately marketed watches associated with him, I'm looking at you, Hoyer, or those gifted to the King of Cool, the 417 was purchased by the Hollywood icon himself.
Thousands of riders compete in motocross in the United States. One of them is Steve McQueen. If the movie studio moguls realized what he was doing on a Sunday afternoon, they'd have a coronary.
McQueen, just like the elite pilots and officers that this chronograph was originally produced for, chose it for its defining supreme legibility and revered robustness, which translated perfectly to the extreme rigors of his motorbike racing.
Hey, Buzz, remember the time when we could get up when we pleased? A hot breakfast waiting for us? Not have to go out before daylight and get shot at by a lot of guys we don't know and probably don't like their job any better than we do.
The only trouble with this plumbing war is it begins too early in the morning. Say, Boland, you're out of clean socks.
My apologies.
Long story short, to my utter amazement, they actually saw the video that I shot on Roosevelt Island, no less, and reached out to me to see if I would assist them in co-designing a new 39mm version at long last. Naturally, I was deeply honoured, and this culminated in me visiting their factory in Gutenbach, deep in the Black Forest of Germany. And this still remains one of the greatest moments of my life, one that I will simply cherish forever.
I actually think he was the main watchmaker, the main person.
That's crazy.
So it's always a team effort, right? But I think he has done most of the work here.
Yeah, it's one thing to wear a watch, but then to see where it was put together, assembled, and regulated. That's magic.
Still, after all these years, I feel the same.
Right, of course. So he worked tirelessly to make this period faithful 417 a reality, and for my contribution, a special limited edition with their signature red pusher was then released, before one without it, for general release.
What makes you so special?
I'm good. That's what makes me special.
So the Red Lion was many years ago now, and I typically only bring it out of the bank vault for very special occasions. It remains an incredible chapter in my life. The inspiration behind the name, the lion, obviously the logo of the channel, red, the red pusher, along with some very subtle changes over the limited edition. So it was just logical, it was a no-brainer. Chronographs are complex things and thus expensive, especially if you want to do them well. And in a post-moon swatch world, how can Hanhart offer something more affordable, but still tough, and with a do-it-all everyday watch appeal that is more accessible, and thus, hopefully, take this criminally underrated brand to a well-deserved wider audience? Like what Swatch did with the Omega Speedmaster, or more recently Tag with their reissued F1, and even Breitling with their revitalized Quartz Endurance. Well, with any luck, this is the answer. And don't worry, it's not a plastic Happy Meal 417 like the Moon Swatch. But after many years of R&D, I can finally introduce the Hanhart Preventor HD12. A true game changer for Hanhart, as it features a highly scratch-resistant technology being utilized for the first time in the brand's history. But before we get all scientific and engineering, let's address the aesthetics. As many of you know, one of my favorite watches of all time is the Rolex Explorer, with its unpretentious, puritanical, function-driven and restrained class. So using that as a starting point, we also looked at another enthusiast favorite, but at a more attainable level, the Hamilton Murph. Now what's really interesting here is, despite Hamilton having an undeniably long lineage of military timepieces since World War I and before that, it was obvious to me, even when I first saw it, that the dial and cathedral handset of the Murph, just look at the numerals, took cues from the Germanic stylings of Hanhart, who undeniably put this combination on the map, rather than its own field or pilot design mil-spec language synonymous with Hamilton. This is because while Hamilton did make field and pocket watches for the Army and Navy since 1914, they did not, however, make military pilot watches until much later in the 1960s and 70s, by which time this Hanhart style had permeated into almost every brand making watches of this genre for military timekeeping.
Rage against the dying of the light.
All right, Enrique.
Yes, you are.
So I'm a big fan of the movie and the cosmopolitan classicism of the Murph. So we used it really as a benchmark, a kind of a line in the sand that we wanted to supersede in as many ways as possible. What's fascinating is the two brands would clash again in Indiana Jones. Best not to mention the character of Mads, incidentally my favourite actor of all time. It's just crazy, two amazing actors wore Hanharts.
With this, we will have our victory. It's not yours. You stole it.
Indiana Jones and the Diaper of Destiny. Wah, wah. I tell you, if good old Walt Disney knew that someday, far in the future, his little company would be making a big action movie about a man who kills Nazis, he'd be appalled.
That's good.
I was pinching myself when I saw it, because of course it's accurate to the movie and to the character. He was an officer, albeit on the wrong side, but anyway, that's another discussion. It still remains another achievement for the Hanhart brand, so it was fortuitous, really. Firstly, the 39mm size is a crowd pleaser in terms of diameter. The Goldilocks sweet spot between 36 being too small and 40 and over being too big. However, unlike the Murph and Explorer, which are both over 11mm in height, we strived to make it thinner and thus more comfortable at around 10mm. Then came the water resistance. Both rivals are 100 meters, so of course we made this 150 with a screw-down crown for good measure, without needing to go thicker on the case to achieve it. Quite astonishing. Not to mention the coolest Gothic H logo ever. Sorry Hamilton, yours is cool too. I still love you, but just look at that H. As for legibility, well, I can't deny the 3, 6 and 9 dial of the Explorer is one of my all-time faves. But it literally pales, get it? Pales? Pales in comparison to every numeral being superluminovaed up to the max. Including that ever so beguiling number 4, my personal favourite. This might sound a tad pedantic to fixate on such minutiae, but to me, it has to be the greatest set of numerals ever committed to a dial, and poetically links back to the esteemed 417ES, or even those before it. Talking of dials, there's 2 options available. One matte black, and the other in a highly understated and subtle denim blue. Both designed to qualify for that quintessentially urban Gentry trademark phrase of being a strap monster in versatility. For example, during my field testing of the prototype back in the Black Forest earlier this year, I happened to have a spare NDC parachute strap, and it worked like a charm. On the 38mm Murph, Hamilton, for some reason, opted not to loom their seconds hand, so of course we did. Now notice the pop of Hanhart red to the gently curved tip in order to avoid parallax errors, a devilishly clever little detail that niftily nods to the iconic red pusher I mentioned earlier. Che figo ragazzi, eh? How cool is that? While Hamilton may have their modified H10 with the boosted power reserve, our Preventer has a true no-date Celita SW200 that has not been slowed down, thus keeping its much smoother 28,800 VPH. It also comes rigorously regulated to all positions, an impressive standard practice at Hanhart that goes far beyond Hamilton, with the data of each watch being meticulously recorded. Now I only do a few collaborations a year, 1 or 2 at max, because I want to maintain the exclusivity. Also, it devalues it, limited editions here, there, everywhere. But this is different. This is going to be a permanent part of their lineup until it's discontinued, which gives people more time to save up, and I love that, because it becomes more available to more people. If there's one fundamental thing to understand here, it's that this is not the same as an extra coating. Far from it. This is an extremely specialist and expensive process of carbon diffusion treatment that changes the actual steel on the outside of the case, making it reach a hardness of 1,200 Vickers. The same level, incidentally, as Zinn achieves, no less. Now, I am no engineer, so I will share a screenshot that you can pause and read yourself for all that technical stuff, just in case my dyslexic, academically challenged brain has messed up here. But here at the Urban Gentry, like John Hammond says, we spared no expense. So now over to our Isla Nubla correspondent, Hugo Mountbatten, scratching a sample violently, which then looks permanently marked, only to be wiped away like it never happened. And that, my dear Gentry, is HD12 technology. Obviously, a severe hammer blow or the equivalent extreme trauma, like being attacked by a T-Rex, will dent the steel. But then again, you'll lose your limbs in such a situation. However, I drop tested it from table height onto a variety of surfaces, which is a more likely scenario, and it seemed completely unaffected. This watch is not about reinventing the wheel, but making an everyday classic, at the closest we could possibly get to just over $1,000 or around the €1,000 mark. That is available on a selection of high-quality calfskin straps, each with a luxurious Alcantara inner side for increased comfort, which I really do adore. And for a few hundred more, you can also get it on the bracelet, complete with push-pin solid end links, screwed individual links, a double button clasp, with micro adjustments and even a diver extension. Not for diving, however, even though you could actually theoretically wear it diving. It's more for your adventures if you need to wear it outside of gloves, a flight suit even, or just multiple layers in challenging explorer-esque expedition conditions. Farewell from Roosevelt Island. Do nominate a channel you'd like me to forward these watches on for a full review. 2 rules: make sure it's not a watch store. If they're selling watches, if they have a website, they can't give a real review. And secondly, the reason why I'm sending these watches on is to be a real review, you have to actually try them. It's like reviewing a restaurant and not tasting the food. It's madness. People are still doing it, claiming it's a review from pictures online. Anyway, nominations in the comments. I'll leave it there. Massive thank you to Hanhart, of course, for making another dream come true. Don't forget to like this video. I'll catch you in the next one. Onwards and upwards. Ciao.